one of the first talks that we're going to have here at the new social media lab here at Ryerson University. My name is Philip Mai. I am the academic communication manager here at Ryerson, but I'm also a collaborator at the social media lab. The lab is actually on the 10th floor, but because of the number of people who are interested in this talk by Heather this morning, we had to move it down here just to make a little more space. The lab, like I said, is a new research lab here at the Ted Rogers School of Management. And what we do is we study how social media is changing the ways in which people communicate and disseminate information. The director of the lab is Dr. Anatoly Gruz. He is also a Canada Research Chair in social media data stewardship. He's not here today. He's actually traveling at a conference. So what do we do at the social media lab? For those of you who are new here, what we do is we try to make sense of social media data. There's so much data coming from these various social networks, and a lot of social scientists are trying to figure out how to access that data and use it in their research and help us to understand a little bit better about who we are as people, how we're using these tools to communicate, and how these tools are changing the way we interact with each other. So one of the ways that we do that is using social network analysis and data visualization. We take the raw data coming from these various networks, and we represent them as a network. And the reason why we want to do that is because it makes the data more manageable, and hopefully we're able to expose and show things in ways that might not be easily findable or seeable just from looking at the raw data by itself. One of the tools that we developed at the lab is called Netlytic. It's a social media analytic tool that allows you to capture data from YouTube, Instagram, RSS feed, Twitter, Facebook, and so on. And then once you have the data set, you can then visualize it, you can do text analysis on it, or you can just export it out to other types of software. So basically what we do is we help and work with other social researchers who are not keen on working with APIs and programming, but want the data. So we help you get the data that you need, and then help you to do some initial analysis on it. And once you're done, you can export it out and use it on Aura or NVivo or some other type of software that fits your particular type of research. Okay, so after our talk this morning by Heather, I'd like to invite everybody up for a quick tour of the lab. It's upstairs on the 10th floor. So I'm done. Next I have one of our research assistants, Jenna Jacobson. She'll quickly introduce our guest. Thank you.
Having previously completed her PhD in molecular pharmacology at the University of Aberdeen, Dr. Heather Duran is currently a project officer in public engagement with research at the University of Aberdeen. Heather was recently awarded a Winston Churchill Memorial Trust Travel Fellowship. In this project, Heather is gathering international perspectives on the use and future role of communication of the sciences using social media. She is exploring how scientists are using online platforms to reach the public. And this project is going to be taking her across North America to China as well as Japan. During her PhD, Heather co-founded the O Science magazine, which is a student-led science publication. Since her PhD, she has also led various training sessions on social media use for researchers and continues to speak at conferences about social media by the academic community. Given her interest in how academic researchers are using social media, it only makes sense that Heather is also an active on online platforms. So please be sure to tweet using her handle, and as well as any of our social media lab conference networks. Please help me in welcoming Dr. Heather Duran to the Social Media Lab.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and hi everyone. I was going to start with a bit of an introduction, but I think we've all covered support in Aberdeen everyone, so I don't just work with scientists, work with researchers across the board. But this project that I'm doing, I focused it on the use of social media to communicate science. And what I'm really interested in is, can social media be used to generate two-way dialogues about science rather than just the dissemination of information? So that's what I've been targeting. This is the first time I've summarised some of the things that I've been doing as part of my trip, so you're kind of test for that. There'll be plenty of space for questions at the end, and I'm really interested to hear your views as well about some of the things that I've done. Because the project is all about learning from other people, learning what other people are doing around the world and what their views are on social media. So I started off by thinking, what do we know about social media use by researchers? What are people doing already? I also think about what can we do to support the development of skills in that area, and what does the future look like? So what will happen going forward? Kind of a big question. So these are some of the reported benefits of the use of social media. So you can gain enhanced exposure for your research work and for you as a researcher. There's an enhanced potential for collaboration because you can network online. There's also skills development, so you learn to talk about what you're doing in different ways depending on what network it is you're using. Enhanced future employment potential, possibly. As you're expanding your network, more people know who you are and what you're doing. And there's also maybe an increased access to funding and resources. There's examples like crowdfunding, but there's also more subtle ways that people fund research that might be accessed if you're putting yourself out there a little bit more. So what do we mean by social media? It's a bit of a messy landscape. There's lots of things on there. There's lots of different networks that people are doing. I'm kind of taking an overall view of what people are doing and just trying to scope out what networks people are using the most and how people are using them. So I'm not going to cut anything out, and if people have anything to share about networks that I don't mention, I'd be really interested to hear that. So what do we know already? So I did a bit of a scoping exercise of some of the surveys that have been done, and I've got a little fact sheet as well, so if people are interested in hearing more about some of the surveys that have taken place and the links to some of the research. But one of the ones I wanted to mention was the AAAS survey, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, that was done with the Pew Research Team and a few others. And they noted that almost half of researchers that they spoke to, I think they interviewed over 3,500 researchers, all based within the US. Almost half are using social media to talk about science or read about scientific developments. About 24% said they were actively blogging about science and research. But although 20% kind of, it was 27% that said they're actively using it, 20% are kind of watching the space, but not really kind of actively using it. The next one was a survey by Nature, the Nature Publishing Group, that was in 2014, and they interviewed again over 3,000 scientists, and they also interviewed humanities, arts and social sciences researchers, and this was around the globe. They found that 88% of scientists were aware of and had visited the network ResearchGate, of people familiar with ResearchGate. But of that, only 12% of scientists use networks like Twitter, so there's a bit of a difference in that one. And then the Lupton one that I mentioned is a survey that was conducted online, mostly via Twitter, so it's skewed towards reviews on Twitter, but that was a global one. And 97% of those surveys in that said they were using social media, and 90% said they were using Twitter, which is kind of skewed from where that is. But it's interesting to see the differences and the take-up depending on how people are conducting the surveys and what the views are. So I wanted to look at what the situation was in Aberdeen because we weren't sure. So we submitted a simple survey to our academic community, and we advertised this both online and via internal networks. And we got about 114 responses. And it was a great response from both PhD students right through to senior staff. And we kind of just wanted to know their views. It was quite simple, and we just asked them, what do you think? But we also asked them what they were using and what they were doing. So we found that on the survey, the majority of people said they were using social media to discuss work or related things. And I think it's skewed to people that are using it, because I think people that started just by bragging really, and then got followed by people actually interested in my work. I went in on LinkedIn on ResearchGate after publishing a paper so other people knew who I was. We wanted to use it to get the most up-to-date information, to follow conferences and journals. And that's something I speak to people quite a lot about, located in Aberdeen. Sometimes it can take quite a while to travel, but you've got access wherever you are in the world to conferences that are taking place through social media. It's a way of engaging with a conference I couldn't attend. It just came naturally and as a good way to get to know people and to reach a wider network and to get expert advice. And I asked them a little bit about what actually it is that they're sharing. So these are some of the responses that we got. Information about research work, links to other resources, CV, research publications, general news stories, links to your own content, blog websites. I found this was quite low actually, so people are more likely to be sharing what other people are doing and chatting about that. I think that's a trend across a lot of networks. Information about events, and then I asked a question, are you sharing what you had for lunch and like personal information, just to kind of prove that not everyone's on the network to tell everyone what they had for lunch. The next thing was sharing some of the experiences that they had. So have they had anything positive come from their use of social media? So the posting on a LinkedIn in the Horizon 2020 group, now this is a grant funding scheme in Europe, led to an application by our group together with a consortium. So that's obviously a great outcome from networking online. Connections have helped me resolve research-related scientific problems, so quite technical discussions online. Posting a national journal club and publishing a letter to an editor as a result, so that's great career exposure. And then negative. And we didn't get anyone who said that I had a real negative experience, but we did get quite a few comments about people being quite cautious about what they're doing online and being aware of some of the issues that might come. So I don't post pictures of me drinking too much at a conference nowadays. I always carefully choose my posts, and I've not found any problems up until this moment. Now, we also asked people who weren't using social media, because we got an idea of who was and who wasn't. And we asked those who aren't using social media, why did they not, had they just not consider it, or did they consider it and decided they didn't want to, or are they kind of looking at getting online but just don't know how to get there? So this is from the grad student group, and the majority was lack of training, not sure how to go about it, a little bit unsure of the landscape, kind of questions about that, and a little bit about risk, time, don't see why I should use social media, and haven't thought of using it in a professional context. So in summary from the survey that we did in Aberdeen, it's mostly being used to connect with others in research, is what we found. It is a minority of people that are using social media for research-related discussion. If you look at the landscape, not everyone is on there. There's a little bit of worry about its value and how to fit it in with other work at the time. And there's a group that aren't quite sure what they're supposed to be using social media for, but are quite interested in getting online. So in Aberdeen, as mentioned, we do offer regular training sessions on social media for researchers, and that runs probably about twice a year. But I also speak to people one-on-one about what they might want to do, how they might want to integrate it maybe into their grant applications, and I encourage people to think about why social media might be relevant and might be a good tool to use, or not, as the case may be. I also wanted to mention this. So there's an organisation called VTI in the UK, which is a higher education research development guiding body, and they offer lots of advice and support for researchers, and they published a social media handbook in 2012, which actually contains quite a lot of interesting case studies and information. I've got a copy of it here, printed off, and it's an interesting read. Some of it is a little bit out of date because the film moves so fast. So this was published in 2011, 2012, and obviously the case studies from a little bit earlier than that, but it's got some good case studies in it. So these are some of the challenges that I thought about scientists getting online. I think there needs to be more of an institutional support for people, so people feel that they are empowered to get online and that they're supported in that, and buy into enhanced profiles and support researchers. There's also an element of risk involved with getting online, both to individuals and to the institutions themselves and the funding bodies. respond to people. There's a lot of two-way conversations that go on. That could be with other scientists, and a lot of the conversations can be quite technical and driven by the scientific landscape. There's a lot of overlapping audiences within this group, so people, and I know from speaking to people that they know that they share audiences across people, and it's the same people that you find popping up across those accounts. And then from institutions and larger bodies, there tends to be less engagement from those accounts. There tend to be more dissemination of information and less responses and communications. Not saying that they don't do any of that, but it tends to be less than from the individual accounts that we see. And it is dissemination and research focused. So I think there's an opportunity to create communities around individual research projects and areas rather than just focusing about general conversations about science. And that way there's an opportunity to facilitate two-way engagement. I saw a really good example of that as someone who had done some crowdfunding. They actually don't have any social media networks, but started using their crowdfunding platform as a bit of their own social media network. So they're communicating with a public audience that funded their project on a regular basis, and they got quite a lot of value from that. There's an opportunity to engage with audiences about specialised themes that may be not covered in kind of wide general press, and you can have much targeted conversations. And there's an opportunity to demonstrate a wide number of voices from the scientific community. There's a low barrier to entry getting on social media. People can discuss a lot of different things on there. And so people, the public, may become more familiar with seeing a wide number of people discussing science. So these are a few things that I have noted that keep coming up again and again. And these are things that are said by some of the top communicators of science on social media at the minute. So the first one is always set your goals and your appropriate measures. So what do you want to achieve by being online? Who is it you're trying to reach? What is most appropriate for you? And do that at the start. Write it down so you've got something to look back on. Rather than this organic approach that's maybe existed in the past, if you're looking at using it for the benefit of your research area and yourself, then that is one thing that you might want to think about, so you can really maximise what you're doing. And this is important, the second one, because you need to know your audience. So if you're trying to reach an audience that you're not currently in, you need to know where they are, and you need to pick the most appropriate way of contacting them. You need to know how they speak, what they're doing online. And one thing that's come up a few times is, rather than spending time, if it's not appropriate to develop your own audience, what you might want to do is work with an audience that already exists. And this comes on to point 3, which is be a friend and engage appropriately. Someone said, you wouldn't just turn up at someone's offices and say, hi, I want to speak to you. I've got this project, let me talk to someone about this. So don't do it that way on social media. It's not the same thing online. Think about how you approach a group. Think about how what you're doing might be of value to them, and they can then help you, and that way reach a broader audience that maybe sits outside your existing network that you have. And engage appropriately. So make sure what you're saying is in a language that they understand, is of interest to them. There's a great quote that teenagers aren't interested in aging or articles about scientific aging, so that's not on their radar at the minute, so that might be not the most appropriate thing to go speak to them about. And then do what is easy for your audience, not what's easy for you. So a lot of accounts exist and people put on information because it's easy. They find it easy to use a certain network because they know it, but is the people that you're trying to work with on that network, or are they sitting on a different network and having different discussions? You need to be aware of that. And be flexible. So the goals that you set, make sure you go back and look at those and then integrate what you might have learned from kind of scoping out, watching, and listening, and experiment early on. Do that early before your account might get bigger and bigger following, because once you've established an account, people are expecting a certain thing from you or from that organisation. So the opportunities to try out new things happens early on. And you might want to establish and experiment on a couple of most people I've spoke to actually focus when they've got a larger audience on one account or maybe two accounts rather than trying to spread themselves across everything. So I think social media is one part of a researcher's toolkit for engagement and communication. It's one thing that they can use, and people need to judge whether it's appropriate in that instance, and it's appropriate for the audience that they want to connect with, and are they going to get feedback that they want from that medium of communication. These are like, I wanted to chat about some of the negative aspects of social media. So these are some of the things that people have discussed about how to avoid maybe that. I find a lot of social media networks to be a very supportive environment. I've had great conversations with people on social media, and there's networks like the PhD chat and early career research chat, which I know are very supportive of people within academic careers and sharing of information and resources. But you've got to remember, online profiles represent science, parent institutions, funders and individuals. If you are in a publicly available space, anyone can read your conversations. That could be misinterpreted, and things can spill over. So you might be having a conversation with another scientist, for example, on Twitter, but that could be picked up by anyone around that network. So that's just a consideration that people have to bear in mind. Approach online debate in a measured way. Think about what you're saying. Remain positive. This is what your private might not be private. Some of the Twitter discussions about Ebola between scientists then got picked up by wider audience and wider audiences and wider audiences, which might be a great thing because it encourages more discussion, but it could also lead to some misinterpretation of information, and that's something to think about. If it's not the right medium to use, it's hard to have a deep discussion in 140 characters. Move to a different platform or network. Don't continue that on there. Move it to a different space. And existing in isolation isn't the best option. It's better to be transparent with people, like your funders and your research groups, that platform exists. Get support from them. And then if something isn't quite going right and you need help, they're there to help you. Especially through institutions, I think that's quite important. And the people that I've spoke to have been very supportive of these accounts existing, of people getting themselves out online, and they are happy to help. They don't want to tell people everyone should be online or on social media, and that's not the message that I want to give either. But if people think that it's a relevant space for them and they can get useful information and have useful discussions from it, they want to support that. So thinking about what creates, this is one thing I wanted to look at as part of the fellowship. What environment do people need to be in to get good engagement online? And I think one thing that's coming out is because networks are getting more complicated, there's more of them, how do you know which one's relevant to use? You need help from those expert either communicators or people that know the networks quite well or know your audience. So you can get information from them about what might be best for you to do. There's also the training and sharing of best practice. You have to spend a bit of investment time in learning how to use a network, especially if you don't use it individually. What are the right things that people pick up? There's a lot of information online and a lot of resources online for people to read, but I think it takes people who know that information to push people in the right direction of where that might be so that they can learn more from it. And I think it needs to be built in to research and engagement strategies. So people need time to develop that. People need time to develop content, information, to stay on the networks, to watch what is happening, and to communicate with people. It can't be something that just exists separately. If people are serious about creating those two-way dialogues, it is a big investment of time to do it. It's easy to set up an account, but it's very difficult to maintain that. And especially if you're looking to connect with an audience and generate a network and a community that you don't naturally kind of sit in, you put even more investment into to do that. So that is kind of what I've summarised so far. I wanted to kind of do it quite succinctly, but there's lots of other things as well. And I wanted to speak to you guys in the audience about what your views are, or if you've got any questions, or anything else that you wanted to share. hear from people who are online. So it's that they know that you're online, and if you want help to do something, that they're there to support you. So I think that's that point about not existing on your own and worrying too much about, am I doing the right thing or not? There's always going to be that decision when we either we share something or you put a comment. But if you're connected in with the people that are leading communications, then you might feel more comfortable in what it is you're doing, things like that. I also find it's really valuable to watch other people, see what they're doing, watch what conversations they're having, especially if you're looking to connect in with that new audience or new network. Spend a bit of time invested in watching that. How do they speak to each other? What kind of things they're doing? And that can evolve, because as the networks change or implement a new button or things like that, things always change, but you get a good idea of what people are interested in, how it works, and whether it's going to be valuable for you to get involved with those conversations.
I definitely watch our Dean of Science and Dean of Arts. They're very active Twitter people, so it's to see what they're doing.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I've tweeted for 5 years now, and so it's been interesting to see the communities change and evolve. But I think with a lot of new people coming in, you get two sides to it. One is I don't have enough time to deal with emails, so this is going to add to that.
Yeah.
And then it comes to the ebbs and flows as to your interests and your engagement as well. I think a lot of the time we do a bad job at in training people to use social media comes around how to manage their identity
Yeah.
and their interests
Yeah.
within it. Because the branding is very different depending on where you go and how you engage people. And I haven't necessarily seen a lot of good training programs that teach people to do this. So have you found anything along those lines?
Yeah, I think that's an area that we're kind of moving into now. I do a couple of things in Aberdeen, or be doing a couple of things in Aberdeen. I'm going to modify some of what I've done based on what I've seen on this grid. But I think there's two sides to it, especially I'm very interested in the public engagement side of how social media is used. I think that's different to when researchers are networking for their own professional kind of side of things. And I think you need to structure what you're doing on the networks differently if that's what you want to achieve.
I actually have questions about your results from the Aberdeen study,
Yeah.
because I was surprised by certain things.
Yep.
First of all, I'm really surprised to see that PhD students are not as much on Twitter or on other networks as the senior researchers, because if there is a generational difference, it would be in the other
Yeah.
way around. Or is that support from the institution? Is that you are putting together, let's say, ResearchGate, LinkedIn, Twitter, and then we know that probably senior researchers might.
Yeah, I think the difference, the question that we asked if people are using it in a professional context, if they're using it to discuss their work, and I think you'll get a completely different answer if you said, are you online or not? Because I think they are. But I don't think that bridge is being crossed between using it professionally. And I think part of that is that question about like lack of training, obviously not sure what to do, not sure how to use it, and not sure what to say or what my views can add to that conversation. And I don't know if it's around that or not. And I don't know if that's across the board. That's just a snapshot in Aberdeen. It's something that I have noticed and kind of observed and hadn't seen kind of confirmed anywhere. So that's just one snapshot. But I think that might be part of the reason why. I don't know if anyone's got anything to.
So here at Ryerson, we are in the midst of drafting social media policy, but it's not going to be a policy per se in the sense that these are things you can and can't do. It's more of these are general guidelines because, again, you're getting into academic freedom and that territory, so we want to stay away from that. But also we realize that it's important for people to have a voice online, and nowadays to be found, you have to be online. So right now we're walking down that road. Any university in the U.S., for example, come down with a clear-cut social media policy, they burn. The staff and faculty would push back. Some schools in the States and the South have put in these policies. They tend to be more religious type schools that have done that, and they have to walk back those policies. Here in Canada, most of the schools don't have specific social media policy, but they tend to have best practices. Many people who are actively like myself and Dr. Bruce, we always add the line that views are your own, because at the end of the day, if you can't say, if you're not going to say this to somebody in face to face, you should be saying to them online. That's how we try to figure things out.
I think that's the stance of the majority of people who are thinking and are viewing this regarding some policies that they already have in place about your representation of the institution, and that applies to the online environment as well. It's not different to if you were standing up doing a public talk somewhere or engaging with anyone in a professional capacity. Yeah.
I think there's a big market here, Ryerson, for us to be able to teach, particularly our faculty, how to use social media. Because, so I run the graduate program for molecular science, and beyond using social media for my own research, I also see it as a way to promote my program. And I set up a Twitter account. I tried to engage people in being involved. I want faculty, I want students to say, hey, congratulations to my, the student X who is now presenting at this international conference. I'd like this to be part of the Twitter feed. It was like pulling teeth to get anybody involved. And we have a couple of younger faculty who are more engaged, and that's great. And in fact, I'm not verify myself senior. I've certainly been around for a while, so it was an effort for me to find out how to use it. Was there any resource at Ryerson? No. I actually had to go to the office of one of my younger colleagues and say, teach me how to use Twitter, because I got to set up this Twitter account and I want to get it going for our website. And so I was taking notes from him on how to use it. I talked to a lot of my age cohorts in my department, and they say, oh, there's no way I'm going to use that. I don't know anything about it. I don't know how to use that.
Yeah.
And it's just, they have no idea. I mean, I think I only understand the tip of the iceberg in terms of how to use it effectively, both professionally and for the program. But I really think that there's a huge need for us to be able to help faculty to understand how to use it and how to get something out of it.
You will be seeing more of those programs in the coming years. We literally just launched the social media lab here. Even though the lab mainly does SHRC-funded research, one of the things that we discovered since we've been here is that there is a huge demand, like you said, from faculty and from staff trying to figure out how to navigate all these different social networks and whether they should be on it at all. And as Heather mentioned, not everybody needs to be on it. It is one tool in the tool belt. It's more of learning when to use which tool for what purpose. But it's not a cure-all. A lot of people are saying that, well, if I'm on social media instantly, if I build it, they'll come. No, not necessarily. You have to figure out what is it that you're trying to achieve, and you have to start building that community. It's not going to be one day. It takes time to have an engaged community, because it's not about collecting. It's not like collecting stamps. Social media is not like collecting stamps. You're not just collecting them and putting them in a book and then showing it off once in a while. What you're trying to do really is you're trying to build a community of people who want to help you and who you would want to help in return. Because at the end of the day, that's how and why the tool is so powerful. But if you don't have the time or the intention or want to do all of that, then maybe you shouldn't start. But these are things that we will be
But I
working
think
with.
it's about baby steps. I think that there's a lot of faculty who simply don't understand how to use it and dismiss it completely as maybe irrelevant to them. But it's about baby steps. I mean, it's like the generation before us, how we have to teach them how to use computers. I mean, you see young kids going into old folks' homes and sitting down and saying, I'll show you how to play a game, or how to connect to the internet, or, how to look up this particular drug that you're on. And suddenly you're engaging them, and they're interested, and they want to be able to use it. But I think we have to take those baby steps with a lot of faculty.
I think it's about the messages used to talk about what social media can do, and I think in a lot of instances, if you've got that over an initial investment of time to get on there, which I think is a big barrier of how to use a network and what it can do. But there's benefits to it can be quicker than email for communications. It can be more direct. You can link in with more networks faster, which are valuable for people with also that connection to a public audience can be really valuable. And one thing I wanted to say was that it needs to totally move away from that, the obsession with numbers as metrics. So the fact that follower count and things like that. It's not, you need a community, so that needs to have a certain number of people in it, I think, to be valuable. But that conversation needs to be back and forth. Unless your aim is to just disseminate and get as wide as people knowledge about what you're doing, that's a different aim. But I think for the research community, it's about that two-way interaction, and that isn't about engaging with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people on a daily basis. Because as well, that's unmanageable. If you're a researcher and your primary aim is your research, it's not valuable for you to be on Twitter 24/7, just managing those comments and replies. You want to be doing that. So it's about thinking about that as well. But I think those discussions about, rather than just, oh, you should be on social media and you should try this, it's like, well, have you thought about it this way? It actually could save you time using this for this. And it could help you in this area. Show them that way. Oh, I'm looking for an answer about this. Well, why don't you start doing this? And you might help. Or you see what this conversation online has happened, and people go, oh, that's really interesting. That's useful. Yeah?
There's a question there.
I wondered about students and reaching out to them, and if you, this may be outside of what you're looking into, but I wanted to know, someone else had mentioned it, this gentleman in front of me, how students have their own personal one, and they may not want to engage professionally because these are separate things and they want to keep them separate. So is this a place to reach them, or is it not?
I think that's a conversation that is happening. It's not something that I've been focusing on in this project, but I kind of followed some of the conversations on that. People trying to work out what the best way is to manage that, and also for your teaching staff and faculty, how do you separate your own personal online information from that of the students as well. I think people have been using a lot of kind of closed groups to interact, whether that's via LinkedIn or Facebook, but I think there'll be more spaces for that to happen coming because people realise that it's a need, so that networks that are built to facilitate those kinds of interactions, so people can separate things, but I don't think we're there yet, and there's definitely a lot of people debating that. And there's a couple of conferences that run on that so far where people are kind of having that conversation, so it might be interesting for you to comment on.
And I have a question that is preceded by a long comment.
Okay.
I want to go back to the motivation of people that are actually using Twitter, because what we are talking here, or social media, is a tool for doing one particular set of communication. It's two-way in engaging the public. We're talking about public science.
Yeah.
But we have been studying scientists at social media lab, and we know that not only do they talk with other scientists, they even want to talk with people from their own discipline. Somebody said it's just like pulling teeth to make them do something new. It's hurting the cats to do even multidisciplinary research. So it seems to me it will be extremely difficult to convince people that do not have already the mindset that the public should be engaged. Not to use Twitter, just to use anything that goes in that direction. And I was just wondering whether you see a particular breed of scientists or a mindset that will have that motivation.
I think
because that's the deeper issue behind the tool.
Yeah, I think quite a lot of that push needs to come from the research funders themselves, so they direct people what to do. In the States, there's lots of discussion around broader impacts of research, and that's built into some of the grants that happen. In the UK, similarly, they're looking at the research funders there and looking at embedding engagement within research grants so that it's part of the process that people go on. And part of that, an important part of that, is allocating time, people, and funding to be able to manage that. Because it can't just happen, or if you want to integrate it fully, it's very hard to do that on top of just doing the research process. It needs to be built in as part of that. one thing I haven't seen yet is good examples of where social media has been built in as a tool as part of that. There's a couple of examples, and they'd be great, but I think this is an area that could really develop over the next few years. But it can't be thought of as I'm writing, I'm doing a project, this is what I'm doing, I will set up a Facebook page for it. That's not the answer. It needs to be more than that. It needs to be, why are you choosing a Facebook page? Why are you not choosing YouTube? What investment do you need? If you're going to be making videos, that's the whole set around that as well, and it needs investment. And it needs to be appropriate for the audience that you're trying to reach. There's no point putting it on YouTube if everyone's on Facebook or a different network. So that, I think those are important questions and considerations that people need to think about in order to make them valuable, useful, and also so that they actually happen. Yeah.
I was interested to see on some of your preliminary findings from the survey that you did, that the third point was about time.
Yeah.
And generally, I handle our faculty's social media. Okay, I don't have time.
Yeah.
It is actually really quite time consuming. I mean, in addition to all of the other things
Yeah.
that I do. So I was just wondering if you could speak to how that sort of came as number 3 as opposed to, I don't have time to, I have my Twitter account, I have my LinkedIn, I have, my whatever, and I just wondered if you could speak to that a little.
I think that one was the barriers to graduate students
Mm.
for getting online. And I think maybe just the biggest barrier within that group was the not sure what to do rather than the time aspect. I think if you speak to different groups, then the time aspect would come out a little bit more. And I think that, again, going back to that structure and like the thought thing, it needs to be built in properly into roles because it's not something that people, otherwise when you're just doing it in the evenings and the weekends and things like that, and trying to schedule it, it needs to be built in properly as part of someone's roles. And people to realise that it's a big ask for people to know networks well, to understand what's working, follow what other people are doing, and also generate information and content.
So I'm active both professionally and socially on social media, and I think that the comment on time is very pertinent because a lot of people who I meet, researchers, say I don't have time for that, right? And what I don't have time means is that I don't see the positive outcomes of that, because there is firstly an investment of time, even though it is, there's a low barrier of entry. You still have to learn it, but then it takes a long time to craft a community and then to see a positive outcome of that. Whereas in the academic community, the currency is publications and tenure. Those are the only two things, largely, that make that contribution to someone's success. So saying, add on this thing and you will see a positive communication, a network. It's a bit of a harder sell. On the flip side, I know being active and having a community, I have seen a tremendous amount of positive outcomes for myself. But I think if we want to try and engage scientists or researchers, I think we need to build that into the measure of success. Is it, having how much have you engaged the public? Are you doing public lectures that are accessible, at the university? Are you blogging your research? Does that count to anything? Because if it doesn't count, then nobody's going to do it because it doesn't count.
Yeah, I think the question is also why you're doing that. So there's no point investing a lot of time writing a blog that no one's then
That no one reads, yeah.
And it's not just about putting it out there and people can find it. It's about that thinking through the process of what do you want to do and what is the best route for you to do that. And drawing on expertise that might exist within your institution already, that might exist within the funding body so that it can better help do that, which saves people time because they don't have to learn everything themselves. Yeah. portrayed very negatively a lot of the time in the press because of what goes on there. And I actually find that it's a very supportive network on there, but people don't hear about that or know about that, which is why there is kind of that barrier. But I think we will see changes. And just going back to the question about different types of communication, I think we might see more integration of different tools, because sometimes Twitter is the quickest way to do something, and other times email is, but they don't work very well together. So it'd be good to see more of that working across networks, of how, not how you can just throw out things across all the